You have a pile of shit and a gold ingot, and you mix them together. Obviously, the shit is going to turn into gold, right? No! Wrong! What you get is a stinky piece of gold ingot that no one wants unless you take the shit out of it. There's an old saying in Audi which goes by shit in, shit out. And what this means is that if you grab a shit take or a really poorly done take and you give that to even a really experienced audio engineering in a huge great studio with thousands and millions of dollars in equipment and gear, still the result is going to be shit. Maybe a polished tort or a perfume piece of shit, but still shit. In a perfect world, you would have a perfect space, a perfect studio with nicely done acoustics, huge monitors, NIF preamps, thousands of dollars in gear, and high-end instruments. A place where even a fart would sound professional. Yet, we're not there. At least, not there yet. Here's the thing, I often find myself watching videos, even pictures, of incoherent setups. And by this I mean that you see a guy with a really high-end guitar like plugged into a really shitty Digitech multi-effects, and the cable is all chewed up and it's almost about to fall apart, and then all of that is plugged into the computer with no audio interface in between. Why in the f***ing hell would you invest so much money into a guitar if then all along the process the signal is going to be basically destroyed by all of the horrendous things you are doing to your Also, when you go to local gigs, you might find a band that has a really high-end guitar, thousands and thousands of dollars invested on a guitar, and then the same story. A big cable going through another 90s, I don't know, 100 years old, multi-effects pedals that sounds like crap, and then into your friend's borrowed amplifier that goes into another 4x12 that only has one speaker. It's really, I really don't get that. Honestly, I'm not trying to shame anyone, and my point here is not making fun of people's setup or stuff like that. What I really want to do is basically to address this as a problem. If people are trying to get the most out of their setup or out of their gear, if you find yourself asking why your $3,000 guitar sound like complete shit, well, take a look on your setup, the horrendous things that you're taking that signal through. And this is something that is not easy to say, but we need to get more obsessed about knowledge and less obsessed about gear. And it's really difficult, even for me to say. Every single day I find myself looking through websites, checking out new guitars, checking out microphones, and all of these things that I actually don't need but I want to get. And this is where the problem lies. Knowledge beats gear every mother time. And actually a first piece of gear that you will need to buy is none. You don't need anything right now. The first thing that you really need to do is check the space where you are going to work. If you're planning on making your first home studio, or if you have your first bedroom studio, or the first thing you need to address is the acoustics. And by this, you don't need to have a degree on acoustics engineering. You can actually get pretty good and decent results with little to no money in acoustic treatment. And by no money at all, I mean that you can use even old pillows. You can use things that you have in your home. You can use old rocks to start treating your studio or your home studio or your bedroom studio. There's actually this really cool series done by Rode, and it's on YouTube, and it's called, I forgot the name, Studio Rescue. It's like a Pimp My Ride but for studios. It's really, really cool. Go to YouTube and type Studio Rescue. It's really cool, it's really helpful, and it's actually really fun. The second most important thing before buying anything is, once again, this is where you're going to control your inner little child, and you're going to ask the question, do you actually need it? Do you actually need this instrument? Do you actually need this piece of equipment? Because if the honest answer is no, then you can think of alternatives. You can think of other ways of, going around that problem. For example, let's say that you want to buy a new guitar because your old guitar sucks and sounds like it. There are actually many alternatives or many cheap workarounds, and one of them is obviously upgrading the guitar. And by upgrading the guitar, I'm not saying that you should invest $300 or $1,000 on microphones and all of that. Even the slightest change will improve the sound of a guitar, only by doing a proper calibration, intonation, changing the knot, which is really cheap. It's going to cost like $2, $3 to $5 to $10. It will improve the sound of your guitar, trust me. If you even can buy used aftermarket pickups, basically you are going to save half of the price of a brand new one. And a used one will sound just as good as the brand new one. Another thing that needs no money at all, and it's basically a mindset about adapting yourself to the space. Once again, the space, the acoustics is 80% of your problems, trust me. If you know how to adapt yourself to that place, and once again to treat that place right, you're going to get better results. And another common mistake of this is like having a bedroom studio or a small studio and a 4x12 cabinet. You don't need that. You actually don't need that much power. You don't need that much number of speakers unless you have a isolation device that you can put the cabinet in, which by the way is another overkill for a bedroom studio. If you are just starting, it's not a good way to go if you want to record guitars. There are less expensive and more practical ways of doing this. Once again, knowledge. It's getting old, I know, but knowledge will help you avoid stupid decisions that will cost you a whole lot of money and that will lead you nowhere. You don't need to expend $1,000 on high-end microphones. A good all-around microphone, a good cheap all-around microphone will work wonders if you have the knowledge. For example, this thing right here, an SM57, an audio engineer's best friend. This thing only costs less than $100. Used, you can get it even by $40, $30 or something like that. This is an all-around dynamic microphone. You will find this on snare drums, toms, electric guitars. You can actually find this thing on your grandmother's purse. This is an all-around thing. You can throw it to the ground, it won't break, it will last forever. It's really cheap, a Shure SM57. Every single audio engineer will tell you that. Another important thing, get to know your equipment. Get to know your instrument well enough. If you don't know how to operate that piece of gear that you already have, don't even bother yourself in buying a new one because you won't know what that thing does. And I can bet that you are only going to buy that because everyone is using it, because you see your favorite guitar player using that, because your friend told you that it's so cool and all of that. If you get to know that piece of gear well enough, you might realize that it's not a complete garbage or it's not complete rubbish. And obviously the first thing that you are going to want to do, and I know that you haven't, read the manual. Read the manual. If you don't have a physical copy, go to the brand's website, they're going to have it there, to have that for sure. And after you do that, you might even try to find people who have that same gear, that same equipment. Go on YouTube, go on forums, Reddit, wherever the hell you like. I'm pretty sure you're going to find people who have that same equipment and you can see examples of how they use that equipment. You can see settings that the people use to make that equipment shine, and actually you can get inspired with all of that and grab that thing, take all of the dust out of it and give it a second chance. So let's say that you already walked through all of these steps. You have a decent acoustic treated space, you gave some love to that old guitar, you changed the strings, wires correctly, it's not humming, it's not hissing, and now after 10 years you know what that f***ing knob does. So now the question everyone asks, what to buy? What to buy? Because we always need to buy new gear. Yes, we do. We actually done what we want to, and that's something like to buy or not to buy, that is the question. The first thing that I would recommend you to buy is a good computer. A computer, obviously these days, is the heart and soul of every studio, no matter if home studio or professional studio out there, because we are not recording on analog. Well, some people are, but this is basically where 60 to 50 to 40% of your budget is gonna go to, because trust me, there's nothing more annoying than working with an underpower or slow computer. It's going to lag, it's going to freeze, it's going to lose takes that you have been working for hours and hours. It's really annoying. Get yourself a nice computer. Nowadays, you don't have to invest a fortune to get a good computer. Mac or PC, well, that depends on you and your likings. But be sure that the computer that you are going to invest in has enough RAM power. I would recommend 16 to 32 gigs of RAM. Maybe 32 is overkill, but hey, if you want a computer that can stand a beating on resources, plugins, multiple channels at the same time, invest on RAM and a good, decent processor that can handle the workload. Remember, obviously, this is very important, no computer, no recordings, no studio. So make sure you get a nice computer. And have in mind that you could actually be doing an investment for 5 to 10 years along the road. The second most important thing, obviously, an audio interface. This is a device that is basically going to convert the analog signal into digital. It's going to talk to the computer and it's going to enable you to edit and mix everything digitally. So here is where it gets a little tricky. You can find a whole lot of information out there that people will tell you, invest on a really good analog to digital converter or invest on a decent audio interface. Do you need to invest on a high-end audio interface, or can you get away with more with a cheap audio interface? Well, the answer is kind of like yes and yes. Hear me out. Yes, to buy a good high-end analog to digital converter, it's a sort of a rare case. Let's say that you are a solo musician, or that you are a singer on an opera or something like that. Whenever the attention is going to be only on one instrument, and mostly acoustic instruments, acoustic guitars, as I said, strings, brass, or something like that, is only going to do a solo album or something like that, well, you might need to invest on a good audio interface. And this is why. A high-end audio interface will give you a very good analog to digital conversion. And that means that the source, or what the microphone is speaking, is going to translate exactly into the digital world. So there are not going to be any missing frequencies. Everything that the microphone is speaking is going to translate exactly into the digital world. Well, that also depends on the microphone, but that's another thing. And basically that is what you are going to want if you are a solo musician, or if you are going to record yourself doing only one instrument, or that is going to be the star of the show. Because if you plan to do that on a cheap audio interface, you might also get some tonal coloration, and that might actually happen with cheap analog to digital converters that are inside of that box. So if you are a musician, a solo musician, and you want to make a good recording, or you want to make that one take that is going to help you do, I don't know, you might want to invest in a high-end audio interface or a high-end analog to digital converter. Or is the case that you can get away with more with a cheap audio interface? Well, basically genres like rock, metal, blues, country, or genres that has many loud sources, all of that unwanted noises that cheap audio interface might get into the source, they are all going to be masked in the mix. And actually, the tonal coloration might favor the tone of your electric guitar. So if you are playing metal, if you are playing rock and hard rock and all of that, you can get away with more with a cheap audio interface. And actually, cheap audio interfaces nowadays are not like complete crap. They might not be as clean or as pristine or as flat as the high-end audio interfaces, but they are going to get the work done. When you think of audio interfaces, if you're not very used to that, you have to think of the audio interface as a translator. Basically, he's going to translate your musical performance into the computer. So if that translator is not very fluent in that language, and it's kind of drunk and cheap and comes from a dark, unknown place, well, the translation might get lost in the way. You have the place, you have the computer, you have the translator. Now you need a program in order for you to record all of your material and to mix it and to edit everything. And that is a DAW, Digital Audio Workstation. So basically there are two ways you can go around DAWs. One, if you are on a budget, really easy. Reaper. Go with Reaper. It's cheap. It's a professional digital audio workstation. It has absolutely everything, and if not more, that all of the other known DAW has. So there's nothing that Pro Tools has that Reaper doesn't. So tight budget, go with Reaper. Easy. Now, if you have money to spare, first option I would say, Pro Tools, because everyone uses Pro Tools. I'm not a huge fan of Pro Tools, it's my personal opinion. But the thing is that if you are going to send that project, if you are going to send that mix to another engineer or to a friend of yours, or it might be very common that that person actually uses Pro Tools or had Pro Tools in their computers. Once again, and only if you have money to spare, my personal favorite DAW, Motus Digital Performer. I think that this is such an underdog in between DAWs, and almost I don't see a whole lot of people using Digital Performer, and I think it's such a powerful DAW. Every single time that I work with Digital Performer, I think that everything just makes sense. The built-in plugins are so good, they are really so good. The reverb, Proverb, it's so good. There has so many options. The quality is great. It has very good virtual instruments. It's really good. If you have the money, my recommendation is go with Digital Performer. I think you can try that software. Yeah, you can try that software for 30 days and then you would need to buy it. So that's it, you're done. No, you need something to listen, whatever the hell is that you're doing into that computer. Speakers, studio monitors, headphones. Which way to go? Well, if you have a decently treated space, go with the studio monitors. If you don't, a set of headphones will have to do in the meantime. So once again, this is not a video for me to tell you should buy this and you should get this and your setup is garbage and you're doing that and that is wrong. No. You are free to invest your hard-earned money in the way that you like. If you want to buy a $3,000 guitar and have it there hanging on the wall and you won't even play the damn thing, but if that makes you happy, go ahead and do it. I'm only doing this thinking of you guys that are starting into home recording, that are starting or are wanting to have a studio to record your ideas, young musicians or old musicians that want to have a studio and home. I hope you find this useful. And once again, knowledge trumps gear. Knowledge trumps gear. If you have any questions, if you want to show me what is that you want to do with your home studio, please do it. I really love helping people trying to figure out what their first steps or their next steps are going to be in order for them to make a studio. I really love doing that. I really hope this video helped you, and if it did, please hit the like button and think on subscribing to the channel. Have yourself a wonderful weekend, and until next time, break your neck.